If you're a developer, then you probably cannot get around the Cursor IDE right now. For me, it's been popping up everywhere. And last week, I officially made the switch to make this my main code editor coming from VS Code for the past 5 years. In this video, I will share everything that you need to know. So Cursor is a fork of VS Code. So that is very important to understand. So if you are already familiar with using VS Code, the switch is going to be very natural. If you're new to VS Code or Cursor, then it might require some setup on your end, which we will get into. So it basically adds a whole lot of powerful AI features to the VS Code that you already know and love, where the main features are autocomplete, inline edits, chat, and the composer. We're going to cover all of these features in this video to ultimately let you decide whether you want to give this awesome IDE a try. So in order to get started, you first need to download and install Cursor. Go to the website, download it. Then if you are already using VS Code, you can simply migrate. So they have a very easy onboarding experience where if you open up Cursor for the first time, it asks you to migrate. So these are going to be your themes, your key bindings, your extensions. And for me, this was literally like a one-click setup. And I was in an environment that was already familiar for me with all my shortcuts and extensions as well. So this is a really good feature that they have introduced there. Then once you have everything set up, you can open up your Cursor IDE and check some specific settings. So you can see this is Cursor, it's a demo project. It's very similar to VS Code. And here, top of the file, you cannot see that probably right now, but here is Cursor. You can go to settings and then to Cursor settings. Here you can get into the general settings, the models, some of the features, which we will cover some of them in a bit, but out of the box, it already comes pre-configured quite well. Now, one important thing to note on pricing is that you can get started with a 2-week free plan, so everyone can try this. But afterwards, you have to upgrade to the Pro plan, which is, if you're going to use it, probably what's recommended because you have all the features and also all the models that you want to use. So you don't even have to plug in your own API keys. You have a single subscription over here. But of course, this begs the question, here's another $20 per month subscription for an AI tool. I personally got ChatGPT, Anthropic, GitHub Copilot, now Cursor. So you really, with all of these new AI tools, you really have to decide, is it really worth the money? For me, this is a definite yes. So let's get into why I think that is the case. And in order to demonstrate these cool AI features, I'm going to start with an empty project right here. Now, I have a Python background, so I'm going to be sharing some code examples within Python, but you can do this with any programming language. But we're going to start blank and I'm going to ask the AI to help us generate examples. So I have no idea where this is going, but I also want to show you the iterative way to work with these AI tools to move your code base forward. Now, quick note before we dive into the examples, a lot of the settings and things that you will see within my environment are already part of VS Code, not Cursor. And I recently created a video on how I set up my VS Code environment for data science and AI. So if you want to refer to that, please check out this video. I will also link it. So let's start with the most straightforward one. That is the autocomplete. This is a feature that is also very similar to GitHub Copilot if you are familiar with that, but it has some additional features. But for now, let's try and start with we have a main.py here. Let's start with some typical data analysis. So let's try and see if we can import pandas as PD. So here you can already see the autocomplete kicking in. So it shows it in like gray italic text. And what I can now do is I can hit tab to autocomplete. Then next, we can also see, hey, do you want to create a data frame over here? Now, we don't have a CSV file right now, so that probably doesn't make sense. But you can see it is suggesting the next steps within your code, and you can easily hit tab to autocomplete that. The larger your file, the more context you have, the better these recommendations are going to get. All right, so that was the autocomplete with tab, very straightforward and also not much different from GitHub Copilot, for example. Now, to cover the inline edits, chat and composer, this is where it gets really cool. Let's first talk about the keyboard shortcuts, because this is definitely the best way to work with these AI tools within Cursor. Now, out of the box, Cursor comes with default hotkeys, default shortcuts. So either depending on whether Windows or Mac, Control or Command K to open up a new editing window. And then we have the chat, we have the composer, and also the composer control panel. We will show all of those in a bit, but I want to highlight one thing, and that is when I was migrating from VS Code and I went to the keyboard shortcuts, some of these default keyboard shortcuts from Cursor were already overwritten because in VS Code I had different key bindings. So this took me quite some time to figure out how to correct all of this, but I have this document over here where you can search for example, the new editor window. You can type in AI action model generate, and here you can see right now it's Command K. Here you can also check if there are any interfering key bindings, and then same is true for the chat. So just if you have any problems with keyboard shortcuts, make sure to follow this list. Alright, so now let's demonstrate the inline editor. And here you can see that Cursor also lets you know the key binding. So this is really nice if you forget them. So you have Command L to chat, Command K to generate. So what I'm going to do right here is I'm going to fire up a Python interactive session. And this is part of VS Code, not of Cursor. This is just how I like to run my Python code. And from here, I'm going to hit Command K. Here we have the inline editor. And here we can essentially start to talk with the AI, give instructions, specify what model we're using, and let the AI do its magic. So let's create an example data frame for a tutorial on data analysis. And I'm going to be using Claude 3.5 Sonnet, which is by far the best model for coding right now. But you can also see that you can pick the different models over here. But for now, let's hit enter and see what the AI is coming up with. So we can see it appear over here in the editor. And what I really like specifically about Cursor compared to, for example, also GitHub Copilot is that it shows the code snippets that it is suggesting in a way that is very similar to how you review changes within Git. So you can see the green lines that it's going to add that code, and later what we will see, you will also sometimes see red lines if it removes certain code. So for now, I'm just going to hit Command Enter to accept this, and you can see we have our data frame in here. So let's see what that looks like. We have a nice data frame, and it also suggests here to print the head of the data frame, but that is not needed because we can view it over here. Okay, so I think this is a good start, but let's actually select this, hit Command K again, and say also add a last name column and extend the df to 20 rows. All right, so let's see what it comes up with. And now it's going to extend this more rows. And here we can see the final result. And this is what I meant by what I really like about this visually. And now it's very similar to your experience with Git, where it now shows, okay, in red is what is currently in your file. We're going to remove that, and we are going to replace that with everything that is in the green. So we can even do that line by line, as you can see over here, by hitting Command Y, or we can again just hit Command Enter and accept everything. So let's run this, and now let's look at our data frame, and let's see. Now you can see we have a data frame with also a last name, and we have 20 rows in there. So that's how we can make edits in line with the editor, but we can also hit Command L to open up the chat window. So let's see, this might get a little cluttered over here. Let's clear this, and here we can see that we have the chat. So now instead of inline over here, we have the current file selected and we can chat with it. And I believe we can also make selections and then hit the chat. So we can see that you have the lines in here, but we can also just reference the whole file. And the difference really here is that we have a little bit more of an overview, I would say, if we use the chat window. So what I would recommend is for quick inline edits, you can use the inline editor, but if you want to do some bigger changes or even multi-file changes, which we will get into in a bit, the chat window is really convenient. So let's take this file over here, and let's say that we want to now export this data frame to a CSV file. All right, so I'm asking it, can you export this data frame to a CSV file in the data-raw folder? So let me show you. I have this project structure over here, and we're in the source main.py, and then it should actually be one step above that. There is a data raw folder. So I can now run this, and what it will now do, instead of showing this in the main file over here that we're working on, it's going to show the changes here in the chat. So this is one of the difference, right? Before you saw the green lines coming up in here, but here in the chat, it's going to suggest how we can do that. And it's also going to give us an explanation. So this is more similar to how you would code with, for example, ChatGPT open or Claude models open within the web browser, right? But okay, so we can have a look at this and we can see, okay, this all makes sense. So create the directory if it doesn't exist. Then we're going to export the CSV file. And what we can do is we can hit apply. And what it will then do, it will then come to your file. You can also click on that and it will show the changes. And from here, we can basically accept everything, get rid of the chat. So we can close that by hitting Command L again. Let's run this. And now we can have a look in here and we have an employee data.csv file. So that is now how we can take any file and just hit Command L and it will open up the chat window and we have an AI experience similar to ChatGPT or using Claude, but without having to switch context and go to the browser. But it doesn't stop there, because what really sets Cursor apart is that it understands the context and the structure of your project, and we can also reference specific files. So if you've done any AI-assisted coding, what you would typically do, you would work on something, then you would copy paste it into ChatGPT or Anthropic and then ask, can you expand on this? Can you improve it? Whatever kind of request you would have. The AI would then come with that answer and you would have to paste it back into your code base. Sometimes it has these annoying things where it's like, this is your existing code and insert new code here. And then you would have to figure out, okay, but where is that exactly? Not anymore. With Cursor, you can not only link the current file that you have, but you can even reference or mention the entire code base, documents, the web, files, folders. And you can simply do that by hitting add, and then you can select what you want to add as context. And for me, like when I saw this and how good it worked with Cloud Sonnet 3.5, that for me was, okay, I'm going to make the switch. So let me show you how this works. So we just created the dataset. I called it dataset.py. And let's now say we want to visualize this data. And let's say we want to take the name and we want to take the salary and we want to create a bar plot of that. So here's a new file called plot.py. We can open up a new chat window. Currently, it has the context of plot.py, but what we can now do, let's say import the CSV file that you exported in, and now here comes it. Let's do an add. Let's go to files, call it dataset.py. So we give this context to the chat window and then create a bar chart with name and salary. So let's run this and see what it comes up with. And here it is providing suggestions for plot.py. So we can even click on that. If we're not in it, we can jump to it. We can hit apply. And I think everything looks good. So let's close the chat window for now. Let's start this up. So now it correctly understands where this CSV file is. So that it has to do one step back, then load it, loads the data, and then we can create that figure. And it also understands that in order to plot name and salary, it needs the columns name and salary, because from within this data set, it could see those column names. So I'm showing a simple example here, but it goes to show that how you can create context and save that context over your code base in different files. And for me, that's really what sets this apart from using, for example, web-based tools where you go copy and pasting. It works really well if you're working on an isolated problem, but this really speeds up so much time when you are working with multiple files. So let's see what we got over here. So we can, let's do a plt.show. And that is a pretty nice looking graph that we got going on over here. But we can also, of course, just continue and ask, change the colors. Run everything again. Oh, wow. Now we have a colored bar chart over here. One other feature that I quickly want to show you before diving into the composer is using docs. So when you do the add file, you can do files, folders, code. You can search the web. You can even do your entire code base. Be careful with this if you have larger code bases, because it will get confused. But docs is also really cool. So if you do docs, there's already a lot of documentation in here. So for example, the the pandas documentation, you can reference that, but you can also add your own doc. So I just tested this with Pydantic. So Pydantic, it's a Python library, you can pip install it, wasn't available in here, but I just added it. So you could just add new doc, put in a URL in here, and it will index that. And then next you can just come in here, docs, then do Pydantic, and now it has that context for that library. And this is really effective for newer libraries, for example, that got updates or were created after the model training cutoff points. So that is another awesome feature because documentation is really important. And now if you also want to create fancy documentation, like for example, this document that I have over here, you might want to check out ClickUp, which is also the sponsor of today's video. Now, if you're anything like me, then juggling all your tasks, your projects, and your documents can be a real headache. That's where ClickUp can come in, because this really is an app that can bring all of that together. Now, I personally love ClickUp because it lets me manage everything in one place, so I don't have to jump back and forth between a ton of different apps. Now, also as a developer, I really like the GitHub integrations and automations to manage my projects. And creating and sharing documents, whether that's for this YouTube video or for my team or for my clients, has never been easier. Just open it up, create a document, and you're good to go. You have nice documents. Now, I've personally tried all the other apps as well, like Trello, Jira, Notion, or Linear, but to me, there was always something missing. It was either like documents or project development or code, but with ClickUp, it just made sense. I could fit everything in that single application. So if you're looking to boost your productivity, whether that's for personal projects or team collaborations, I highly recommend giving ClickUp a try. It's made a huge difference for me. Check out the link in the description to get started. All right, so we already covered a lot here, but there's one more thing that I want to show you, and that is the composer. So that's this thing over here, and you can open it up by hitting Command or Control I. So this is again another chat window similar to the inline one and also the chat window, but with the composer, it's a little bit more focused on generating files already behind the scenes in your code base without first having to accept it. Now, this is still somewhat of a beta feature, but I've already had some really good results with this. And this is definitely the future of AI assisted coding. So I am going to put in an example here. This is something I just came up with. I have no idea how this is going to work out, but we're going to say we want to create a demo AI project using the OpenAI library. This should be a chatbot that can answer user questions. It should use a knowledge base file that it should also create. We're going to work in the source folder, so do add source. And then I've also said that we are going to use the OpenAI docs. So I did add docs and typed in OpenAI to get that context in here. We're going to use Claude Sonnet again, and let's hit enter to see what's going on here. So now it's going to reference a whole lot of stuff. It's going to create main.py, chatbot, knowledge base. Okay, so now we're going to check. Let's open this up. So this folder was empty. I removed everything. Zoom out a little bit to get some context. So we have all the files, configs, etc. Now let's run the main.py file. So let's see, we have the main.py. For now, I'm going to accept everything. So now we have all the files. We have our knowledge base. Beautiful. We have our configuration. So just plugged in the OpenAI key in the .env file over here, switch the model to GPT-4. Oh, we have a system prompt. So what we got here, we got Chuckbot with the AI assistant, personality of Chuck Norris. Perfect. Okay, let's see what we got going on over here. So we can run this, and this is going to run and loop over everything. So let's just run this. So this is going to create a loop. Welcome to the Chuck chatbot. Ask me anything. User, what's the highest point on Earth? The highest point on Earth is the Mount Everest, etc. Perfect. Okay, so it's working. It's working. The context doesn't really matter over here. It just goes to show that with one single prompt, we can create within our IDE without having to leave it different files with different context, knowledge, configurations, a chatbot, and then bringing that together in one file and make it work. So that's really how awesome this can be. And quick overview on where we're at right now. So quick summary. So we covered the editor, which I recommend for small edits and autocompletes. Then we have the chat, which you can use for bigger files, multi-file edits. And then we have the composer to generate new files and apply changes across the entire code base. But sometimes right now this can be a little bit tricky to figure out what's going on. And then if you have to revert those changes, can get a little bit messy. So use this with caution. You review the changes similar to how you review Git changes. So make sure that you're not always like auto accept, but do make sure to get into the habit of figuring out from, okay, what is the AI suggesting? Make sure to manage context correctly with the @ symbol. So use files, folders, code, or even entire code base or docs. Manage that. So give it enough context, but not more than necessary. Then also consider starting new chats when you're switching to different features or when chat gets too long. So this is also something that I've noticed. So if you have the chat over here, you can see this is a new chat. You can see new chat. You have your history over here. So I can get back to the Pydantic one. Here we have the change in color. So similar to what you are used to in the web browser with AI tools, same goes here. And then, like I've just explained, using docs, really cool feature, especially for after AI model training cutoffs. And Claude 3.5 Sonnet is currently really the best model. So if I'm in here, Command K, you can select those different models. You can also hit Command /. You can see here, over here, you can switch models. For me, leave it at Claude 3.5 Sonnet, but if you want to play around, that's how you can do it. Then finally, to sum up this video, why is it for me personally worth spending another $20 a month on another AI tool? Well, if we compare it to my previous workflow, VS Code GitHub Copilot, and we compare Cursor, it's not only limited to OpenAI's models, which is really the best feature for me because of Claude Sonnet. And going forward, the future, this is going to change. I expect all these model providers to one-up each other every time, every month, every quarter. So having a more flexible tool that you can use to quickly adapt is just great. Also, it's, for me, a much better developer experience compared to GitHub Copilot. So you have the reviews, the undos, the change highlights, switching between different files. It feels more native than Copilot because it's not just an extension. Cursor really decided to create the fork and then build on top of that. That's also, they literally explained that Cursor is not an extension because they couldn't do some of the things that they wanted to include. And you feel that within the experience. You also have very granular control about the context that you add. This is using these @ symbols. And the composer, it works. We've just seen it. It actually works. It actually creates files in a way that's helpful. We can run it out of the box, and this is only going to get better. One thing that I don't like that Copilot has, no AI generated commit messages. So for the past, I can't even remember the last time I wrote a custom commit message. So you come in here with Copilot, you have this little sparkle icon in, and you can just, it will just create a summary of all the changes. So team from Cursor, if you're watching, please introduce this. I don't like writing commit messages anymore. All right, and that's it for this one. I'm curious if you're going to switch to Cursor as well. Let me know down in the comments. And then, by the way, if you're a data professional and you already have some experience, you consider freelancing, but don't really know where to get started, you might want to check out the first link in the description. It's a video of me going over how my company can help with this. Now, in all transparency, it's a funnel designed to get leads for my company. We're currently temporarily closed for enrollment, but you can sign up for the newsletter if you just want to stay in the loop, see what it's all about. And then I want to thank you for watching. Please leave a like if you found this video helpful, and also consider subscribing if you want to learn more about AI engineering, building data-centric applications. And then the next video that I would recommend is this VS Code setup that I recently did. So this will really tie into this setup with Cursor. Everything that you've seen in this video, I'll explain it in this video. If you combine the two together, for me at least, the experience with developing, with writing code is just so much better.